All right, Vikings draft recap. Interesting draft for the Vikings. They only had one pick in the top 100. That was pick number 23, which they selected Jordan Addison. It was a weird situation where we had no receivers drafted in the first 19 picks, and then 4 straight receivers, the final of which was Jordan Addison. Part of you wonders, do the Vikings, did they wish maybe that one of the other receivers fell to them and they had to get their 4th guy, or did maybe they like him better than some other guys? Listen, Vikings have history of success drafting wide receivers after, right after other wide receivers, especially after a TCU wide receiver. So, with the Justin Jefferson pick, of course. So, they really wanted a third option receiver. They needed a third option, and maybe even a second option, really. It is a position of weakness, I think. Justin Jefferson is going to take up so much attention. He's such an elite talent that you got to get guys who can capitalize on it. Got to get guys who can win their one-on-ones. And I think they're hoping that Addison could, really probably be that number 2 option, and then KJ Osborne could be the number 3 option. If Jalen Reagor, comes in and performs well, cool, you get that on top of it. But really, it seems like that's the main thing they're going to be looking at. So, you look at the chart, just to explain what the chart is, you see on the screen, that is every single player that the Vikings drafted, what position they play, when they were drafted, and where they ranked on the consensus big board. Addison was right at 23, and they get him at 23. So, feels like someone who, I kind of like him better as a third option, to be honest. I'm not sure how much I love him as an outside threat right away. That's kind of the issue with a lot of receivers in this draft class. So, I'm interested in seeing how they work with him and what he's able to do, but definitely an interesting prospect. Moving on to Mekhi Blackmon, not to be confused with Mekhi Becton, someone who is, this was a bit of a reach on the consensus big board. You see that the consensus big board had him at 189. They go out, though, and draft him at 102. And I'm interested in, I know that the Vikings are a very, very analytically inclined team. His production was great last year at USC, and I'm wondering if that's why they went out and made this selection and even reached a little bit to make sure they get him. I'm wondering if they really like him as a player. Again, corner, position of needs, so they're filling needs here with receiver and corner. Potentially, that's what you're trying to do. Now, again, I think that, conventional wisdom says if you draft a player who's around 200 on the consensus big board and you draft them at 100, more often than not, they end up being closer to a player that should have been drafted at 200 than at 100. That being said, again, there's plenty of reason to really like Blackmon and think that he could be a good player. And while the athleticism isn't quite what you would like, 4.47 is fast enough, but not anything that you're going to write home about. Only 5'11", 178 pounds, so not the fastest, not the biggest, but again, we are talking about a guy who was selected, after 100 players were selected. So you're not going to get a perfect player. I do wonder if they could have gotten him a little bit later. And this was not the only reach, as Jay Ward, the safety that they drafted in the 4th round, very similar thing. He is someone who was selected, on the consensus big board was ranked 170th, whereas, they drafted him 134. So they made sure that they got him as well. They're drafting guys early, making sure they get their guys. Ward, though, very different than Blackmon. Blackmon had great analytics, great production, all of that stuff. Ward, not so much. He is someone who actually had very poor analytics and production, which outside of run defense, which maybe that's what they're going to have him play. I don't know. Try to put, maybe to have a specific role they like for him. I'm not exactly sure. Does seem like some athleticism is good here with him. He did run a 4.55, which for a safety that's fine. 6'1", so fine size, fine speed for a 4th rounder. You'll take it. It's just not anything particularly special with him, and kind of a bit of a surprise pick, I would say, by the Vikings. I'm sure that they, again, they've done more research into Jay Ward than I have. I'm sure they have a very valid reason for why they went out and got him, but just given the information I know now, a bit of a surprise for a guy who, again, if you're into PFF grades, he's someone who was actively terrible in coverage last year. So according to PFF grade, they had him as one of just a bad coverage player for college, and not even like subpar. I mean, like actively bad last year. So little interested in just wonder exactly how they're going to use him. I'm not exactly sure. Part of me wonders, okay, is he going to be like a box safety? I wonder if he's going to be more of a nickel corner type guy. Maybe that's how they view him. Again, I'm sure they have a role for him, but as of right now, bit of a confusing pick for me. Then you have Jacqueline Roy. Roy here, who seems like he's going to be a run-stuffing defensive lineman, a guy who is not coming off of a great 2022 campaign, although not a terrible one either. 2021, he was his best year for sure. So that's the year that the analytics are pretty solid. So again, you're trying to get a depth guy here. It's round 5. You're not expecting a star here with pick 141. Was projected to go a little bit earlier, 134, so nothing massive. But hey, you like to get on that side of the coin if you can. For Roy, I think he could be a very good, very solid player. And again, you don't necessarily need all of your picks to come in and be stars. Sometimes just get a contributor. And it's always kind of the question of, when you're in these later picks, what's the better philosophy? Do you take some swings and try to get some star players? Or do you get someone like Roy who's like, okay, the odds of anyone buying this guy's jersey are very slim, but he could still be a contributor, and there's a much higher chance that he comes in and at least is able to help our roster. It's always an interesting question mark. Then they had a couple of very fascinating picks. So first, Jaron Hall is one that I'm very fascinated by. Out of BYU, someone who, again, had pretty good production out of BYU, did throw a great deep ball, is 25, so definitely on the older side of prospects, and didn't have a ton of playing time, only the 2 years, but looked good in both of those 2 years. So again, are they doing this to move off of Kirk Cousins? No, obviously not. You don't you don't try to move off of a quarterback with a 5th round pick typically. Maybe, hey, if he does great and you can, outplays Kirk Cousins, well then cool, awesome. But the odds of that happening seem to be slim. I think this is simply a backup situation. You're taking a flyer on a guy and just seeing how it'll work out. They do also have Nick Mullins as a backup, so it's not like they desperately need a backup anyway, but maybe they just said, hey, best player available, we're not paying attention to positional value round 5, we're just trying to get a good player. Could make some sense. Here's a pick that I find very fascinating. DeWayne McBride. I love DeWayne McBride. I actually had him as a number 2 running back, which now I feel like it's going to age poorly because he was, selected in the 7th round. I just don't know if he's going to get the playing time, unfortunately, to really, survive. And probably is going to have to be effective on special teams to be a real contributor. But you see, he was 135 on the consensus big boards. So my guess as to why he fell was just he played against low levels of competition in college. But I thought he held his own even against, he played against LSU, and I thought played well. I have a whole film study that actually I haven't posted it yet. Eventually I will get that out there. Plan on making, finishing the film study on DeWayne McBride and posting, why I like him and think he could be a really key, diamond in the rough potentially for the Vikings. I think he's very good. So I really like that pick a lot, and I could see him eventually being a starting caliber halfback. So listen. Is this the best draft in the world? I don't know, but they got a receiver who should be able to fill a role for them. They got some other players who should be able to fill roles for them, and a couple guys who like Blackman and like McBride who have very high potential. So that's what they got out of this draft class, in my opinion. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from y'all, and of course, as always, thanks for watching.